Good evening, everyone. We continue on our study in the book of First Samuel. We left off yesterday looking at how Hannah came back to Shiloh with Samuel and presented him to God in honor and fulfillment of her vows. And she brought the peace offering. Now, at the end of it, we are continuing on in chapter 2, verse 1, and we are told that she prayed. And as she prayed, and I think something that we need to be aware of is it is spoken out loud, right? And Hannah prayed, and she says certain things, and so we'll just pay a little attention to some of the words that she says, and it is also a very interesting way of how we can uh, take a glimpse of how Hannah, who knows God, who has received favor from God, that God has remembered her and she has fulfilled the vow that she has made to God. And after weaning Samuel for 2 years, and she now presents him to God in the tabernacle to Eli. And now, in conclusion of that meeting, she now praises God. Now, I think it's kind of hard for us to imagine when a woman who really wants to have a child and then finally gets a child, and then after 2 years presents the child back to God. How does that work for a woman? Now, we're not here to analyze her psyche, but really to understand from verse 1 onwards, this is how she feels. She says, "My heart exults in the Lord." The word exult here means to rejoice. And we will talk about this, right? It says, "Rejoice in the Lord." Jump for joy if you want, right? Jump for joy. Basically, to describe to us, she is really thrilled. She is really elated. My horn is exalted in the Lord. Now, this whole idea of horn is about, in the ancient days when you are happy, you blow your horn. So it is an instrument that is sounded out to indicate that one is really happy. And this word here is exalted, is lifted high. That's what it means, lifted high. This is an A and this is a B. Basically telling us that no, this is both talking about the same thing. She is extremely happy. I mean, we use this word happy. Extremely happy. Not just mere happiness, but extremely happy. And she's expressing in true Hebrew style. Then he says, "My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation." Uh, I think we need to break this down a little bit. Now, my mouth speaks boldly. I think uh, this may not be very accurate. I'll tell you what it says. This word in the Hebrew means became wide. Now, let me tell you what I think it means. Became wide. So if you have a face, it became wide. And so this would be really smiling end to end. And it's a depiction of how happy as an expression on the face, right? As an expression on the face. It's not speaking boldly, it is smiling widely against my enemies. And by this, I would think that it would imply Penina. Now, Peninnah has been her rival. She was called the rival wife, and mocking her because Peninnah had children, sons and daughters, and Hannah had nothing. And as you know, we had talked about this the last few days, that in the ancient days, when a woman is unable to have a child, she is really thought of as a dead woman. There's a stigma somehow in the community. But more in a worse situation, the other wife, because Elkanah has two wives, and Peninnah would be mocking and ridiculing and humiliating Hannah. Now she has given birth to Samuel, passed it back to God according to the vow, and she is extremely happy because she is rejoicing. She's feeling very glad, right? She is bright, right? Bright, very glad. And this would be depicted in the face, right? In the face. This is against my enemies, Peninnah. Your salvation will be God saving her. And the idea, and this word really means salvation. And it means Yeshua. Yeshua means the salvation, the deliverance from the mocking, from the ridicule, from the stigma that she is a dead woman, she cannot give birth. And now God has saved her from that situation. And so God is called your salvation in this particular act. God saving Hannah from all the enemies, and especially Peninnah. And so speaks boldly in this case, as you can see, and rejoice is very much a depiction of joy in the face. And she is extremely happy for what God has done. Now, we probably don't think of this as salvation, but in Hannah's case, it is salvation to her because she is now taken out from a situation and a state of humiliation to a state where she can give thanks to God for showing that God is real in her life. And that's basically in verse 1. Verse 2. Verse 2, she declares, there is no one holy like Jehovah. Now, understand, in the capital letters, this is Jehovah, right? In the capital letters. And indeed, there is no one besides you, nor is there any rock like our God. Now, this is a declaration of her knowledge of God, her understanding of God in light of the salvation that God has given her, pulling her up from the depths of mockery and humiliation. And and I guess in a social life like that, a woman feels that she is really, I mean, she can't go any lower. She can't go any lower. And now she is lifted up. She has been vindicated. And so she declares, there is no one holy like the Lord. Now, again, the word holy right here, kadosh, kadosh, that's in the Hebrew, literally means special, unique, meaning there is no other Elohim, because we're talking about God here, Elohim. Now, in the Hebrew, Elohim means mighty one. And idols are called Elohim. Anyone powerful is called Elohim. A king is called Elohim. A judge, because he can rule whether you live or die, is called Elohim. Angels are called Elohim. And Moses was at one point in time called Elohim. And so Elohim, there are many Elohims in that sense, right? I'm using the word like an English word. Uh, and she's saying there is no one so special, so unique like Jehovah, like Adonai, like the Lord, right? Indeed, there is no one except, this word besides you is except you, meaning God is so unique that there is no two of this sort. And that is why it's Kadosh. So what we have here, literally speaking, is Hannah saying, God, you are holy, you're special. There's no one except you, and you are so unique. There's no two of you, and there is no rock, any rock like our God, because he is unique. The salvation that he can extend is opening the womb of Hannah, and in so doing, allow her to give life. The word rock in the Hebrew is referring to some, a cliff. I think a cliff would be a good way of depicting this. A huge hill, right? And in the hills in Israel, they're all rocky mountains, right? Rocky hills. So it is seen as one huge big rock, and it depicts faithfulness. It depicts trustworthiness. It depicts firmness. It also depicts salvation. So it's a symbol of God. So there are many rocks in Israel, but there is nothing like our Elohim. That is how verse 2 is said. People in other nations, they worship other Elohim, and that's their problem. And in this community in Shiloh, there is only one. There is no one like Jehovah God. There's no one like this God, because this God gives life. That is how it is expressed right now. Now, verse 3 talks about her situation, and it's an advice to people, particularly Penina. It says, boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and with him actions are weighed. Now, this is very English, very English. So let's break this down a little bit. It says, boast no more. Do not, how you say, do not speak high, right? Speak high is like boasting, right? So don't boast. And the whole thing here is very proudly means go out high. That's basically what it means. Don't speak. Don't speak in such a proud manner, meaning I think that would be a good way of explaining it. Don't speak, um, don't speak in a haughty manner. Don't speak in a proud manner. And then do not let arrogance. Now, the word arrogance literally means grievous speech. Grievous speech. Now, I think this one would be better understood. How should we say? Falsehood, right? Falsehood. Words that really depicts arrogance, I would say, right? And of course, this is also an A and a B. And this is really talking about Penina. At a time when Hannah could not give birth, I guess the words are expressing these are really difficult to listen to words that is coming out from the mouth of Penina. When Hannah was not able to give birth, wow, the kind of words that will come out of this woman is really sheer arrogance. And then Hannah says, for the Lord is a God of knowledge. Now, this word God of knowledge, I would say you can say that about thoughts, right? Thoughts in the heart. In this context, whatever Penina is thinking of, God knows, right? God knows. And with him, actions are weighed. Now, this one is important for us to just break this down. Actions means deeds. What you do, how you behave, right? And weighed is measured. And so Hannah is speaking about God, and God is a God of justice. Don't think that what you want to do and what you have done is not counted, because God is going to weigh what she has done and pass judgment on that. Do not think that God is not around. And so that would be the kind of a picture that Hannah is describing in this prayer. And more interestingly is how she has described herself. Now it says here, and very quickly in the next couple of lines, it talks about almost about the same thing. So let me just roll it up a little bit. Verse 4, and in 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, all of these are in a sequence of description of how, let me just write down the theme, right? The theme here is that God looks after the weak, the poor, the helpless. And this shows a theme of God of justice. Now, this is the theme. So I'm just describing this to you so that you can think of it this way now. Verse 4, the bows of the mighty are shattered, but the feeble gird on strength. So the weak is the focus. The strong is not the focus. The strong can take care of themselves, and God will break them down if they oppress the weak. So the weak, God will give strength. Those who are full, you are rich, you eat until you are so full. You will come to a point in time when you have to go and work for bread. But those who are hungry will no longer hunger, because God will feed them. Even the barren, the one who cannot have children, will give birth to 7 children, or 7 sons, if you want to say that. And then it says, on the contrary, she who has many children will be languished. Now, this word languish really means to grow weak. And I think the word should tell us to be bereaved. You will be sad. And so you can see contrast, right? These are contrasts. Contrast. This is a contrast. God is always out to help the weak, the hungry, because the people are to take care of the poor and helpless. The barren, the one who has no place in society, she will give birth to 7. Now, it has been said by some parties that Hannah had 7 children, 7 sons. 7 children. Maybe I think 7 children would be a better way to express it. It appears now. I'm just telling you what some of them talk about. 5 of her own and 2 from Samuel. So grandchildren are considered children. Now that's one way of looking at it. But I would think 7 is a complete number, and that would say that the barren will be fulfilled, will be complete. And she who has many children languishes, and is also being said, Peninnah had many sons and daughters, and most of them died. Now that is the appeal to from a more Jewish view of things. I'm just talking about it and just passing on some of these thoughts. That's how they see that God is looking after the barren, and the barren here would be Hannah. The one who has many children will be Peninnah. And in that sense, it's kind of sounds quite reasonable, right? Verse 6, the Lord kills and the Lord makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. What does that mean? Verse 6, the Lord kills. Now, this word here means cause to die. And then makes alive is to revive, right? To revive, to give life, right? To give life. And then he says he brings down to Sheol, brings down to in verse 6, brings down to Sheol, and he raises up or cause to rise up, right? Cause to rise up. These are contrasts: bring down, raise up, kill, make alive. And this is basically to say God has the power to give life. I think that would be a good focus. And in the case of Hannah, allowed her to bear children, right? Allowed her to bear children. Verse 7, the Lord makes poor. And the word poor in verse 7 means to cause one. Makes poor is cause one to be dispossessed. So poor means you have been impoverished, you have lost your wealth. And then he can cause someone, this is cause, to be wealthy. So in the mind of Hannah and in the ancients, they tend to ascribe these things to God. When somebody is rich, he can be made poor. When somebody is poor, he can be made rich. But who can do that? God can do that. And then the other one is he brings low. He also exalts. Now the word brings low is cause to be cause to be humiliated. The other word here is cause to be high. So cause to be lifted high. Okay, lifted high. So the idea of low and high is a contrast. And also, this is about what God can do in their society. Verse 8, he raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles, inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them. Kind of hard to understand some of these things, so let us break it down a little bit. He raises the poor. The word raise here is cause to rise. He causes the poor, and the poor here really means destitute, right? He is weak, like dangling weak. He is the needy. Remember what I mentioned. God always looks out for the oppressed, the poor, the needy, the weak. And so this is what the word poor means. He is weak, he's dangling, he's very needy. Raises him from the dust. And the dust means the dust of the ground. Means that he is of no value, but God will cause him to rise up from a level where there is no value, right? Then he lives. Now the word lives means he causes one to be, well, I guess you can still say he causes one again, cause to rise. Now the second word needy is the word who is somebody who is poor, somebody who needs help. You notice the theme now? The needy is also another word for this word poor. From the ash heap, from the dunghill. Now, in the Oriental sense, when somebody is in the dunghill, that person is of no worth. So this basically says that God will make those whom nobody considers of any value. They can't help themselves, and God will raise them up because God says he can do that. And that's what Hannah is declaring in her prayer. And then to cause them to sit, right? Cause them to sit. So make them sit with the nobles, the princely, the well, I guess you could say these are the the great and rich people to inherit uh, a seat of honor with them, basically to sit with them, because they're of no worth. Now God gives them a seat together with the rich, and to take possession of a seat of glory or honor that is with the nobles. And then the other word here is this: the pillars of the land are the Lord's. The word pillars, I know it looks like a big word, pillars. The pillars really looks like this, the small part. So if you have a hill, then this word pillars uh, is this part here, the small part is also the strong part that you cannot see because it's below, right? It's below and cannot be seen. You just know there that it's there. So the pillars of the land belongs to God, and he has set now this word world is a very misleading word. This word world um, really means a land. Let me put it here: a land that flows. And the land that flows means a land that is rich, right? He has set the land of rich on them. What is them? The small part of the ground underneath that nobody can see, God has placed it on top. What does that mean? It means that whatever people think that is very small, very insignificant, cannot be seen, God had placed goodness, land that flows, that is rich upon, and so that you can actually see it as a rich land that is above the foundations, the small part, or called the pillars of the land. And it goes along these lines so that you can see that this is, this is an A, this is a B, make them sit, and this is an A, this is a B, and this is an A, and this is a B. All of these are basically saying what? That God is taking the society, uh, insignificant parts of society, the poor, right, the needy, uh, to take them to become part of the nobles, to have a seat with all the ones that you can see, so that the society, poor and weak, that nobody wants to see, will be lifted up. And that is what God means. The insignificant becomes significant. This is a prayer of Hannah that really depicts her own life. One who is dead and now is no longer barren. She gives birth, and this is in the response to the vow that she had made. Verse 9, he guards. The word keeps is guards. She guards the feet of his godly ones. Uh, the word godly ones can be translated as the faithful ones. The ones who are pious, right? Who observes the Torah. That is how God looks at godly ones. It's not to say that no, a person is doing all the motions, but these are the ones who care about the Torah of God. And so God says he will, the prayer anyways, says that God is the one who will protect the, well, this word here is the feet, the 2 feet, that as he walks, he is being taken care of by God. Now, every time you see that God will guard something, right? God, and this is God, right? If God guards, it means God loves. Because the word loves is to protect, that is guard, right? Provide. And this is depicting how God loves the one who is observant to the instructions of God. But it says here, the wicked ones. Now, we have seen this word before in the book of Psalms 119 as well. These are what we call the Rishaim, the ones who walks away from the right. So when a person walks away, he is no longer observing the instructions of God. They are called wicked. Rasha as a person who actually walks away, departs from the way of God. And then it says, they are silenced in darkness, for not by might shall a man prevail. Now, this is an interesting expression. And it says this. So, first of all, what do you mean by silenced? The word silenced here, let me use a different color. The word silence here means uh he will be made dumb, right? Be made dumb. In fact, this one comes from word damam. He will grow dumb, he will be silent, and he will die. It comes with an imagery when a person is led to bleed, and the person bleeding will start to lose his consciousness and become silent. And over time, when he bleeds enough, he will die. And it says that he will die in the darkness. And as an indication, in this case, as a part of destruction. And so it leads on to an imagery of death, right? An imagery of death. And because it is not by strength, right? Strength, that a man, well, it says to prevail, yes. That a man, it is not by strength that a man is strong. Now, what does that mean? I think it's easier to understand that when we are seeing it in context of verse 9, that God protects the feet of those who are faithful to him, those who are observing the instructions of God, and the wicked ones are not guarded by God, and their feet will eventually walk into a path of destruction. Now, where have we seen this before? This, you should refer to Psalm chapter 1, verse 6. Right? And it is really not by strength that a man continues to survive, to be superior. And so how can a man be strong? And the answer is with God. And so in reflection of the life of Hannah, she is the one that has no strength. She is the one that has been humiliated. She's the one who has suffered in the hands and the mouth and the lips of Peninnah. And now she is declaring that actually strength doesn't come from a person himself, but it comes from God, who out of nowhere answered her prayer, gave her an ability to give life, and has vindicated her from a woman who is barren or dead to a woman who has seen grace, who has life, who has been rescued. That would be the picture that is being described here. Now we should finish one more verse and then we will continue on Monday. The next verse is verse 10. And verse 10 says this: those who contend with the Lord will be shattered. Against them, who is them? Understand? Against them, these are the people. God, the Lord, so that we can see who is speaking, right? God will thunder in the heavens. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to his king and will exhort the horn of his anointed. This is quite interesting to actually give us a picture. Seems to be like a picture of a prophecy. And so the ones who contend, now the word contend is uh, to quarrel with God. How should we say? The ones who fight with God, right? I guess this would be a good word, fight with God. They will be shattered. Now, the word shattered here uh, means to be made afraid, to be afraid. They will be uh, they will be broken, shattered, broken. Uh, and this idea is to cause to bow down, right? And against them, and it's always against these people who fight with God, God will thunder in the heavens. Now, what does that mean? The word thunder or cause to make the sound, right? Cause to make the sound in the heavens. So in the skies, basically, right? In the skies, the the shamayim, right? The shamayim, and this would be the skies. Now, this is a picture. Understand this, that it is a stormy sky, something that we are very familiar with. And in the ancient days, when there is thunder and great clashes of thunder in the skies, and they hear it from the skies, uh, gives the depiction of God being angry. Right? It gives an impression. Right? This is an imagery that God is angry. And so it is said to them that all these who fight with God, God will show his uh, the angry character, the angry personality. And then God will judge. The word judge here is to, how should we say, will act as judge, right? Will act as judge. And we know God will is the judge, right? God will is the judge. And he says he will judge the finality. This is not ends of the earth as in all parts of the earth or the uttermost part. I think it would give us a better view that this is the end of the land, the end times of the land, right? The finality of the land. So the judgment of God comes at the end. And so we would, well, I guess in today's terms, we would call it the end times, right? And what will he do is that he will give strength to his king. He will give power to the king, and he will exhort the horn of his anointed. Now, all of these, king and anointed, anointed means Mashiach, and king is always anointed in the Hebrew sense. And so now, at this point in time, I think it's very interesting to observe there is no king. And we will say that God is the king. But this is not God talking about himself. This is it sounds like a prophecy that at the end of time or the end of the end times of the land, that God will judge. And God will judge by his king and his Mashiach. And this is one of those times. I think this word anointed probably appears about 8 times. The Mashiach, or what we would say the Messiah. Uh, and God will give it to his king. Now, nothing has happened because First Samuel has not even gone into a period of the kingdom. And it is already in a prophetic mode. And I guess at that point in time when it is spoken, nobody actually understood that there is going to be kingdoms that will come. And it is understood that at the end days, God will judge. And so God will judge at the end is really very much the theme of verse 10. And so that the people always carry this at the back of their minds, and even Hannah, speaking it as part of the prayer, that God has vindicated her. At the end, she has been vindicated. She has been given the ability to have a child. She is no longer the humiliated, the one mocked in society. And she is grateful to God. And so from verse 1 to verse 10 is to depict how glad Hannah is. But more importantly, I would urge all of us to go back and study this text again to see how Hannah knows God the way that she does. It's an incredible prayer. And it tells us that even women in those days, not just Eli or Elkanah, Hannah herself knows God very, very well. And it would be an encouragement to us never to look down on women, because God has given us 10 verses in an ancient text at the time of Shiloh, that a woman, Hannah, who has been an outcast or looked down, humiliated by the rival wife, as one who cannot give birth, to one who has been vindicated, lifted up. And she knows God as one who would look out for the oppressed, the poor, the needy. And that would be the theme that goes on into the prophet books, that when the nation goes against God's desire and principle of justice, to be unjust, to go against God's oppressed, because God will look after, and God expects his people to look after them as well. And so that would be the whole prayer of Hannah, to tell us that God takes care of the weak, the poor, the needy, the ones who the society has no regard, to give them a place amongst the known. And that will be God's work that nobody else can do except God. Like Hannah expressing the fact that nobody but God can allow her to have children. And in this case, give all glory back to God. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.